I'm a believer of guard yourself from things that you don't want to, so that the things that you do want can come into your life. And I feel like many of us are distracted, and we distract ourselves with things, and we spend time with people, and we give ourselves to people that we shouldn't, just because we think that's the best we can get at that time. Well, that's gonna fulfill a short-term gain, like a short-term solution or a short-term feel-good hit. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Fierce Profit Podcast, episode 1. I'm your host, Amit Dunn, and today I'll be talking to you guys about my journey, my personal journey, how this podcast came about, why the name, like why the Fierce Profit Podcast, lessons in my life, lessons in my journey. I'm going to be very vulnerable about things in my life that has really changed things for me. And I hope that it's useful to you. Maybe you can relate to some of the things I say in my story. Maybe you're in a place that I've been through, that I've moved through, and this might support you in doing that. Maybe there's some things I talk about that you want to explore, and this might really help you understand them and allow you to come to them with greater clarity. So it's been a big journey. You know what life's like. Like, life is such a dynamic thing, and if I look at my life, I think so many pivotal points and so many things that have just completely shifted my identity, or just like the sheer awe of it. So I want to start with going back to when I was 21 years of age, which is many years ago. And until that point, I would say that I lived my life unconsciously. So to me, what that means is kind of unaware of what I truly wanted, living my life in accordance to everyone else's plan. So that could look like following the social cues of what my friends are doing, following what was already the established order, following that things that were trending, maybe what my parents told me that were the right things to do, just at the effect of life. And I wouldn't say I lived a terrible life. I had amazing moments during that time, but I would say things were not on my terms fully, and I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know what I wanted at that point, and I didn't know that in many ways I was the creator of my own life, and I could affect that, and I had a free will to choose specific things in my life to change and to go after. So what happened at 21? What really shifted things from unaware of what I wanted to be, who I am, on the deeper sense. Like I had friends, I had community, I had things I loved doing, but like on the deeper sense, on the purest level, who was I and what did I want? Because we're fed, right? And I was fed the thing that we're mostly all fed, which is you go to school, you graduate university, or you get a job, you get married, you have kids, and that is the thing. And you get, and for me, coming from, Mauritian background, my descent is from an island called Mauritius. I was born in the UK. That was what was pushed to us, get that good job, etc. And I studied economics and finance at uni. I was following the path, and I thought I'd get a well-paid job after school, and then that would be my life, and I'd go on that ladder. And that was what was I striving for, really. And throughout that, just have fun, and try and make it as fun as possible. But that was the path. And when I was 21, first time I had a really bad breakup. And I had dated people before, but for the first time, it was where I was not the one that was in control, and I was the one that was broken from it. And I won't go too deep into that story for privacy reasons, but the main part is that there was a big breakup, and at that time we liked each other and we just couldn't be together for actually external reasons, and to be honest, looking back, for internal reasons as well. and things always happen for the good. I know that. So back then, it was a really heartbreaking experience for me. The first time you experience heartbreak is a real shock to the system, and I didn't know how to handle it at that time. It was my third year of uni, so there was exams to do, and I had to study for them. I had to complete my course and complete my university degree, which I was actually worried that I wouldn't be able to graduate from. I thought that I wouldn't be able to because of everything going on, and I thought my grades would suffer so much that I wouldn't get the degree. But thankfully, by God's grace, I did get the degree, and at least I completed that chapter in that sense, which I was very proud of doing. But the breakup really spun me into a place of depression, and they call it the dark night of the soul. Yeah, depressed, not really knowing, kind of lost my faith in life at that point. And at that point, I wasn't a believer in like God, and I lost my faith in things. And I thought, as a naive young man, that my life was doomed at that point, that this breakup, I couldn't recover and I wouldn't find someone new, and that was it. And it took me a while to get over. It took me maybe over eight months to get over that, to kind of get over it. Like there was still remnants of it after, but to kind of get over it, it took a long while. And yeah, I feel like a breakup is a real pivotal point when our identities change. And it really cracked me open to think about my life in different ways. And so I started to think about how what wasn't working in my life and what I truly wanted. It really made me go deep and go internal to live my life in a new way. And it made me want to study. I started to read different books. I started to read books like The Way of the Superior Man, Think and Grow Rich, books by Tony Robbins. Anything that I could get my hands on, I did. And I started to understand that I could decide my life. I could create habits and create my life in such a way which would go towards a better version of myself. And that was really what I really wanted at that point. I was like, this stuff isn't working. I'm broken up. I just graduated. I was like, but there's other things in my life in terms of how I show up day to day, my thoughts, how I treat other people, all these habits of success that I wanted to ingrain in myself that I was learning from these books really helped me at that point in my life. I'm grateful for that. And it really allowed me to see the light, that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And this led me to, I did end up working in an accounting firm. That wasn't for me. And that was soul destroying for me. And that status quo lifestyle that we can live isn't always it for us. And so all that, what's socially admirable. And I was really not happy in that. And I went through some phases, and I went teaching after that. Some things I didn't like fully resonate with when teaching in the system. And I went to the family business because a manager left of ours. And at that point, the business wasn't doing well. It was failing, basically, to be honest. And it was me and my mum that went to support it. We managed to turn it around. We managed to turn around the business. And in a few years, we managed to quadruple the revenue for that business using different tech strategies and making sure that the place was well done and customer service and many details that weren't being done before. We put that into the business, and the fruits were a much more thriving business. It was a real place that I got to be responsible for something, not fully on my own, but responsible for something that I get to create without anyone else kind of helping me or anyone else telling me what to do. It allowed me to feel true freedom. No, not true freedom, but it allowed me to feel more freedom in who I was. And then we ended up buying a second one about a few years later on the same street in Brighton. These hotels are. And so that was my predominant thing I was doing at that time. But it wasn't it still was something missing in my life. There were certain things that I'd been through in my life that had, I guess, had some trauma for me, through those situations, like from some family stuff to, living in London to other things. Though there was some stuff that was really, I guess, affecting like my maximal potential. Like there was more that I felt like I could do and be, and the hotels were great, but there was something else that was really on my heart as well. And I want to fast forward to 2017, which is where I read all the books, I was doing personal development, my life was getting better, and there was definitely I knew more of who I wanted to be and who I was, and habits were working, and I was getting better in my finances, my fitness, all these different areas were getting better. At the same time, I felt that it was something that was still holding me back from fully letting go of some stuff. And then I started to learn about how there was more experiential journeys that I could have that could support me through some of the stuff that I had installed inside me that wasn't fully beneficial for myself. And so I remember 2017, and I'm going to be totally real with you. Some of these things that I embarked on, I do not recommend anymore. Or, from this understanding I have today, I would say there's a different path I would have taken. But I want to be raw and vulnerable about my story, because this is my story. And maybe you're somewhere on this story. And maybe it can help you to see how I move through things. And so 2017 was, I started to learn about this plant called ayahuasca. And ayahuasca is indigenous plant medicine, hails from the Amazon jungle. And it's a mixture of two different plants. One that I think produces EMT, but one also, I can't fully remember the full thing, but it's a mixture of two plants. It's a brew, and I had listened to some podcasts about how people had some revelation experiences to it, and so I wanted to try it for myself, because there were people that I had respect for then, and so I thought something really pushed me to doing it, and so I ended up going to Tenerife and drinking the medicine, the plants, however you want to call it. And I remember having in that experience like some of the most profound experiences in the positive and some of the most dark experiences. Like it was like experiencing heaven and hell in this experience. And really, I remember the first night I how I feel about ayahuasca is like a portal to the spiritual realm, but I also feel that there is a double-edged sword in that spiritual realm, and it's not all good. And I remember the first night was when I started to believe in God. I was agnostic before then, and really I had such a strong conviction, because what I was seeing was completely unexplainable. Like I was going in, like the visions, the things I was feeling, the kind of interconnectedness, everything kind of moved into a space where there is a creator behind all of this. There is something way more intelligent than us behind all of this. And ayahuasca was like the first portal for me to experience God. And then I became a believer. And I was non-denominational back then. I didn't have like a specific path to God, but I knew there was a God. And I remember through that ayahuasca experience, I had some profoundly loving experiences. I felt a lot of love for people. I felt a lot of gratitude to my parents and all they've been through, and it actually makes me feel emotional even speaking about it right now, because I look at my parents' faces and I'm just saying, like, their whole lives, they've just like all the things that they've done, and like I know how tiring it is to be a parent, and how much it really takes to raise up a child, and how they're all trying their best. Like every parent in the world is trying their best, and I just look at my parents, I just have such an awe and gratitude for their care and their love for me. And I don't think I could ever pay them back for that. I remember going to past relationships and things that I'd like done wrong, and how I could have done a lot better, and I was like praying for the forgiveness of those people for me. And I pray for the forgiveness now. I pray for forgiveness for people that I've hurt in my life, because I know I have hurt people. It also taught me that everything happens for a right reason, and there is a purpose for everything that you're going through. And that's what really ingrained into me, that there's a purpose for it all, and that things end up for the good. Like all things have a purpose for the good, even though they might not seem like it at that moment. I also remember that the last day I did it, it was like 3 days of the experience, and the last day was, I would say, hellish, if I'm going to be honest with you. Hellish experience, where I just saw I wanted to just get out. I felt uncontrolled. I didn't feel in control. I thought I was being dragged to some like a place in my mind or my awareness I didn't want to be to, and I just saw other people in the same space, and it felt terrible, and I thought I was going to be here for eternity. Like this would never end. And like time really changes when you're going through a psychedelic experience. There is like the concept of time is completely different than what it is normally. And I felt, I was like, I need to shake this. And there was a point where, I was in that mode, and then eventually it subsided, and things switched, and things went back to a more loving experience. But that was really that was really tough to, like, it was really being going down like into a different world, like a dark place. And I remember that I had all this anger stood up in my jaw, because we hold a lot of tension, a lot of emotions in our bodies. There's like a book called The Body Keeps a Score, where it shows that a lot of our trauma is kept in the body, not just in our minds, etc. It's kept in the body, and they show up in different areas. Maybe you have a tight jaw, or like different blocked areas, or you feel a bit tight in some spaces. Some of that isn't just like you're not doing enough stretching, but you're actually got stuck trauma in there. And there's a story about like a deer that not a deer, but like antelopes, when they have like a traumatic experience, like a lion is chasing them, they'll go to like the nearest tree and like shake it all off, like vigorously. So all that it's funny how I was shaking when I was doing that. So all that trauma is shaken off them. They can then go on their lives without being affected by it, whereas us humans, we store it. And so a lot of anger through that process was being let go up from my jaw area. I had a lot of anger that was kind of through my childhood, the things that I repressed inside me, and a lot of that came out from that experience. I let go of, and it felt a lot more free. My jaw felt a lot more free. And that leads me to also wanting to work more with certain coaches that I loved seeing their content, and seeing if those workshops could support me as well. And I remember going to 2016, I went to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, which I've been twice, I believe. And that was profound for me. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Energetically, it just felt great to be with 10,000 people that wanted to change their lives and to make a difference in their own selves, and to really see life in a more positive way than I've seen many other people live their lives. And it was an incredible time of learning. I learned a lot about how we have upper limits to who we are, and how our identity keeps us stuck in certain places, like psychology of relating to other people, how forgiveness, holding on to grudges with people and not forgiving them, really affects our day-to-day lives. And also health, there was a big chunk on health, which is about like how to eat right foods, the problems with too much carbohydrates and how that weighs us down and is not really highly dense with good calories. It makes us more likely to be obese. The importance of drinking the right water, not like tap water, but purified water. How managing our energy is even more important than managing our time, because that's where everything comes from, how we feel energetically. Drinking different green juices, how that can make a huge difference into our energy levels throughout the day. There was many things in there, like our lymphatic system and how that needs to be well done, and how so we can breathe as well as possible. Like how the importance of our breathing and how we breathe has a big effect on who we are. So I learned so much. And in 2017, I went to another workshop by the amazing Preston Smiles and Lexi Painter. And I want to say that they really changed my life in so many ways, like huge way, changed my life. And I really want to pay such a grand respect to them because of who they are and what they champion, is showing the light of to the world in different areas of what's possible. And I really commend them for that. And I remember how that workshop, we did so many things. I don't want to reveal so much about that workshop because it's a personal experience, but I came away from that seeing the power of coaching and transformation, and it gave me this little hit that I wanted to do the same. And I guess that was the journey to becoming more of who I was and more free and more pure about what I wanted to be. And I saw so many people like literally change in that period and have these epiphanies and do things they could never do before, release things in front of people that they'll never release normally. And how the power of vulnerability really brings us connection. And I would say I was so much more closed than I am now back then. And I know I still got ways to go for sure, but I didn't even realize how closed I was until I go into a workshop like that, and how transparency and vulnerability really breed love, really breed connection with other people. And that's when I started to embark on this coaching thing, and I wanted to be a transformational coach and lead people through similar processes and change their lives through working with them one-on-one. And that's what I want to start to do. And I think I had a blog before then, but I started to ramp up different content about different areas of my life that had improved, and things like, from all the different, I guess I call it, there's like a circle of life. And I'll talk about that in a different podcast, actually. So at that point, I was running these hotel businesses, and taking on that second hotel business was really tough for me at the beginning. I didn't know what I was doing. I never led such a team of people that were older than me. And I kind of crumbled to it. And I was wondering if I can do this. I was wondering if that I could even deal with this, like running my own business. It was like a much bigger business now. Like there was like, I had staff, like more, I had, before it was like 1 or 2 staff, but there's like, now it's like 8, 9 people working for me. And the first time I ever stepped up that position, and there's so much about leadership I didn't know, so much about how to deal with conflict, how to be authoritative and decisive. And these workshops were definitely helping, and I brought a lot of these principles to this business. But at the beginning, especially, it wasn't my team, and they really were used to a different type of leadership, like way of doing things. And it made me really doubt myself at that time. I really doubted if I could ever do that. And in the end, like most of that team left, and I was literally like, what is going on? Like, do we have to sell this place? And we just bought it. But then I started to realize certain things. I started to pick myself up, and I started to understand more what it takes to lead, and what bad habits or distractions I had, or I was doing things in my spare time. I was acting without responsibility. I was still living like a casual life. I was still going out, I guess, too often and doing different things. And that next level of responsibility needed like a next level version of me. And once everyone left, in desperate times, and I managed to get a new team. And then once I got that new team going, everything started to pick up and I started to find my feet with it. And that's like a real good lesson I would say give to you guys. Like sometimes at the beginning you feel like you can't do something and you may have faced it and you feel like this problem is insurmountable and I can never do this. And the easiest way is to give up and run away. I think everyone can relate to this in many different areas, maybe relationships, business, anything, right? But if we give it that go, we let it go and learn, and we like give ourselves some space and some time and some trust, we can get through it. And then it becomes a new level, and that becomes like a new way of, like, it's just breathing and walking for us. And at the same time, I wanted to coach. I remember the first client that I ever got was through my blog. I didn't even advertise me being a coach. He actually came to me, and we still close now. We still do some work together now, and that was many years ago. And he came to me for calisthenics. So I loved calisthenics. Like calisthenic bodyweight training was like my thing. I used to just do it constantly, days after days. I would love to get the new moves, like muscle ups and handstands. I would just love that stuff. And he came to me to teach him calisthenics, and then it developed into like full on coaching, like individual coaching. And I think that was such a blessing for both of us, and it was such a like God had His hand in that. Like it didn't come through any way other than that. Like, and we still together, still work together now, which is so interesting. And we just worked through like certain things through his family stuff, like money blocks. We worked through business clarity. We worked through like vulnerability. There were so many things that we worked through, resistance to different things. We worked through like identity shifts, blocks. There's so many things that we worked through together, and that was my first taste. And I remember at the beginning I was like donations based, so like whatever he would say the value of that coaching would be the price that I would get. And so it took me some time longer before I started to understand coaching more in depth and understanding like pricing and valuing myself. So I think I did that for a bit too long, to be honest. Like I did the donation thing a bit too long, and I should have started to have like coaching payments and packages, but that didn't materialize. I didn't have because I was split by so many different things. I had like other businesses outside the hotel business to help with. I had family stuff going on, and then the transformational coaching was kind of like left on the side, so it wasn't like the premier thing that I was doing. So I didn't really understand that craft fully, and I would have done things a bit differently if I was to go back in time. But we can all say that. So then it was like that was a year of understanding more and more clarity about what I wanted to be and how I wanted to develop in the coaching industry. And it then led me to work with another coach. I think I'm just pausing to remember the timeline of this, if there's something else that is actually more important to talk about. I want to talk about a relationship I had at that time as well. So I got into a relationship in 2018, my first committed relationship in a long time. In many years before then I was like focused on myself and what I wanted to do. But I always had the desire to have a committed relationship, and felt like it was time for me to, not like I forced it out thin air, but it was the right time to go into that and commit myself and see what relationship had for me. And that relationship taught me a lot about myself and my own capacity of relating and my failings. Like, I think when we're on our own and doing things independently, it's a lot easier to just make it about us. Like, it's just we have to focus on ourselves. We just have to be responsible for us. And so our needs, how to meet our needs, is kind of like the focus of the day to some degree. It's like, how can I improve? How can I build this? What am I going to do today? What's my schedule? There's no one else to be responsible for their needs. And I think a relationship really taught me that there is another level of selflessness that we can get to. And the only way for me, that one of the best ways is like relating with someone else and committing to someone else allows us to understand what selflessness is, and putting someone else's needs before ourselves, or just having their needs there instead of just our own. So I remember I was in that relationship since beginning of 2018. I think we committed a few like months down the line, and I would say that we had some great times, and really did. One of my favorite times when we went to Iceland, and it was a beautiful couple of days. We just went like hired a car, and I went riding through different waterfalls in Iceland, and it was just traveling the terrain and checking out the Blue Lagoon, and yeah, it had some beautiful times, but it also taught me how stuff I had to go through in terms of my own selfishness, and how I had a lot to go in terms of intimacy and relating in a deeper way, and really caring for someone and giving up some of what I wanted for them. I guess after that relationship was when I reflected on all that, but it taught me a lot about how what real commitment is, and the blocks I had to real intimacy and really being there for another person. I think many of us have some intimacy blocks. It comes from our parents or what we experienced growing up, and that's the place where a lot of our insecurities and emotions can come up. And I remember that led to us breaking up in the beginning of 2019, or around April time 2019. It just felt like we were going in different directions in life, and it didn't feel like we were the right fit for each other anymore, and we weren't compatible for each other. And I don't have a bad thing to say about her, to be honest. I think she was a great woman, and super kind and super compassionate. But it just feels really like, obviously you thought about it, but it really wasn't the right thing for us to continue that relationship. At this point, I'd signed up to working with a mentor, especially around like marketing, branding, and coaching himself, because I was just trying to get up to speed with the coaching thing. I had my blog, but I hadn't really committed to coaching at that point, and so I wanted to work on that. And then he was doing an event out in Bali. His name's Joel Brown. He was doing an event with Emil Steenveld. Amazing people, and people that I have deep respect for. And so I was working with him on some monthly calls and working with different strategies and strategists, and learning about different principles that I didn't know about. And I always loved face-to-face stuff and experiential stuff, and I really felt that was really where I would get the biggest level of amount of wisdom, was through those experiences. And so I went to the workshop, which was 4 days, and it was beautiful. Like, I met some of the dopest people there, and I just, Bali, and just being in that surroundings, and just learning about all these, like meeting other coaches or people in the similar industry, and facing my fears, or like of speaking on stage. And I remember making a promise to myself that I would speak if my spirit was calling me. I would do the thing that was scaring me. And I remember speaking on stage, and how that really feels, of everyone's eyes on you when you're like sharing something vulnerable to everyone. Really networking with some really cool people, which really expanded me, and I really saw the light and the strength in me from the reflection of other people, and how I was feeling in my body during that time, and how honestly in many areas that I was playing small. And I would say even now I'm playing small in certain areas of my life. And then I learned more about like coaching as well, like how money blocks we have around like charging what we're worth, packaging our coaching in the right way, understanding the principles of how to help our clients in the best way possible, so that we can really support them. And it just, Bali was just a transforming experience, just being there and traveling there. I stayed there for a couple of weeks after, and just being in the land, and it's got such a different feel to London, right? And I feel like different places, when you go somewhere different, you get different thoughts and ways of thinking just by being somewhere different, because it's just a change of environment. And so after that, as I was newly single, I decided that I didn't want to date for a bit. I wanted to kind of keep to myself and keep my energy to me and not be with anyone else in any shape or form, casually or any at that point. Just keeping, like, waiting basically, and just because I was getting ready to. I really wanted something much more serious, but something to build something with someone, and that was my intention. So I'm a believer of guard yourself from things that you don't want to, so that the things that you do want can come into your life. And I feel like many of us are distracted, and we distract ourselves with things, and we spend time with people, and we give ourselves to people that we shouldn't, just because we think that's the best we can get at that time. Well, that's gonna fulfill a short-term gain, like a short-term solution or a short-term feel-good hit. And I just believe that also takes away from the space that people, the thing that you really, really want could come in through. So say you're like focused on one thing, that takes away from everything else. It's like saying, when you say yes to one thing, you say no to everything else. So just remember that when it comes to like dating or even a business idea or work, when you date someone, but it's not really your full yes to that person, you're saying no to that full yes. And the same in other areas of your life. So yeah, being new single made me want to just wait at that point and not give myself to anyone. And then at this point, I was also learning the concept of surrender and how surrender, because I was taught about like the hustle kind of grind mentality from most, like people talk about that and talk about how that was the only way. And I think for me, it's a balance between surrendering to the bigger purpose for your life, like the God-given inputs that come into your life, where God leads you to going, which is like you surrender to that, surrender to God's will, and then you're also taking massive action towards that. So it's a mixture of both. But I was more on the more masculine side of hustle and action more than the surrender side of things. And so at this point, I was really in love with the coaching experience, and so I had someone to work through that stuff, and her name was Azria Cohen, someone who I'm very fond of as well. So once again, this was like a combination of experiential work and also one-on-one core work through different modalities, and end up flying to LA twice, I think, during that. And I really think coaching works. I really feel like coaching really works on many levels, in conjunction with other things that I'll probably speak about in future episodes. And, you know, the best people had coaches, like the best, like Michael Jordan's, the people you look up to, like Tony Robbins. They all had like a mentor or someone that helped them get to where they are today. And no one does it alone, in my opinion. And with God's help and the people around you and mentorships and being around what you want is really going to accelerate you to getting there. Through this, it led me to the name, the Purest Prophet, which I'm going to go into now. And so she kind of saw that archetype in me, and it's something that I've always been inspired by in other people. If you look at the Malcolm X's or the Martin Luther Kings or Nelson Mandela's, they were fierce with their mission and fierce for what they believed in. And that fierceness is what propelled change in the world. For me, how that applies to you is being fierce in what you believe in and fierce with what you want to stand for to make a true difference in the world, and allow that to expand and express, and not allow yourself to dilute the purity of who you are and exactly who you want to be, and be fierce with it. And so that always inspired me, and I always wanted to embody more and more of that as I matured as a person. And prophet, the word prophet to me is someone that also sees what isn't here right now and sees visions of what's to come, and has an idea of what's to come and also has a connection with God. And for me, spiritual life, like the calling of something bigger than ourselves and something higher than what is going on just in our perceived reality, has always fascinated me, and I've always been striving to know more and more about that. Living in accordance with God's will is how I see that. So that's why this came up. And during that time, I was also running these men's workshops where we'd go and kind of process things that were deep inside them that had to come up and be released, and do various other things. Me and my friend Mark John, we used to do this together, and I held other events in London during this time while this was happening. And we were having a conversation one day, and my podcast was going to have a different name beforehand. It was going to be a name that was more neutral, a bit less radical, something that was more in my comfort zone, because naming this podcast this is actually outside my comfort zone in itself. And it took some pushing through resistance to get it to this place of actually being released. And there was also mulling around between different ideas, and my beliefs were rapidly changing at that time. But this name really came through as something that feels authentic to me. And I hope that description can see how it may apply to you in your life. And through that experience, this is the name, and this is it. And here we are on the Fierce Prophet podcast. There's one more experience that I want to talk about before I let that be enough for this particular podcast episode. And there's many more things that will come up in the future. I ended up going to Burning Man Festival in Nevada, in America, which is something that, again, things that were great about it, things I don't agree with fully, to be honest, anymore. But what I did get out of it was the element of freedom that it allowed us to be. So it was a place where you express yourself through your clothes, you express yourself in different areas of your life, and you would be able to do that without feeling confined into any box or any particular status quo that life, like this life, like the life that we grew up in, gives you. And I learned the importance of like gifting and the importance of generosity, because in Burning Man you can't pay for things over there. You'd have to give something to get something. So that was a very important learning experience. Also the importance of cleaning up. There is a policy over there where everything must be taken away from the desert. When they put the festival in there in the desert, there's so many things that get lifted up, so many designs, so many art pieces. But at the end of the day, it's about cleaning up completely and not letting the earth suffer for our lack of responsibility. And so what can I say? 2019 was such a big transformating year for me in so many levels. And I hope that was like a vulnerable way of sharing kind of everything and some of the things that are completely outside the social norms that I have done. And if you have any questions about that, of any of those things, then let me know. I have a very different perspective on certain things now than I did back then. So feel free to send me a message. At Amit Dunn on Instagram or Amit Dunn on Facebook is the best ways to reach me. And I'll put it in the show notes as well. So that's episode 1 of the Fierce Prophet podcast. Time is so precious. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode. And I'll see you on the next one. If you enjoyed the show or have any questions, then please send me a message or a DM at Amit Dunn on most platforms. I'd be so grateful if you would put a rating on whatever platform that you listen to this on. It helps get the word out to more people. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching with me, where we dive deep into relationships, even with your family, with money blocks, your financial situation, we dive deep into healthy habits, accountability, your life purpose, just all the good stuff to elevate your life to the next level, then go to amitdunn.com or send me a message and we can get on a free discovery call where we can just see if we're a good fit and that if we'd like to work together.